Some off seasons in sports, they just explode onto the scene, right?
Mm,
Huge trades, big signings all over the headlines.
absolutely. Total game changers.
But others are quieter, almost slip under the radar. And then there are these other ones. They're really interesting ones.
The ones you look back on later.
Exactly. The ones you might overlook at first, but then you realize, wow, there was a lot going on there, maybe more than met the eye.
And that feels like a good place to start with today's topic.
It really does. We're diving into the Jacksonville Jaguars offseason. People are calling it, well, one of the busiest they've ever had, maybe one of the busiest in the whole league this year.
A ton of moves.
So the big question we're tackling is this. Despite some, let's say, initial doubts and some pretty sharp criticism, did the Jags actually pull off an underrated offseason?
It's a great question because the chatter around them has definitely been mixed. And to help us unpack it, we're leaning on a really interesting piece by John Shipley. It was originally on the Jaguars SI site, syndicated by Yardbarker.
Right. Gives a different angle on things.
It does. It offers a pretty unique perspective on their strategy.
So our mission today is basically to break down those key moves, look at how different people evaluated them.
Like the grades and the critiques.
Yeah, exactly. And figure out why this offseason, maybe, just maybe, has more long-term significance than it seems right now.
Okay, let's get into it. Where do we start? The beginning felt pretty chaotic.
Oh, absolutely. To get why this might be underrated, you have to look at that messy start. They essentially hit the reset button on football leadership.
Right, Coach Pedersen was out. GM Trent Baalke also out.
A total clean slate, or that was the idea anyway, wiping the board clean.
But that's where the first bit of drama kicked in, wasn't it? ESPN's Seth Walder, he came out pretty strong.
He did. What did he say exactly?
He basically said Jacksonville bungled its regime change right from the start. Because remember, they fired Pedersen first, but kept Baalke initially.
Ah, right. I remember that period. It felt awkward.
Very. And the article points out that keeping Baalke, even for that short time, was seen as this big impediment. Like, it made it harder to find a top head coach, created some real friction, it seemed.
Yeah, you could feel the uncertainty. Fans were definitely restless then, but then things shifted, didn't they, once Balk was finally let go?
Exactly. Suddenly, the logjam broke, and boom, they land Liam Cohen as the new head coach.
Who just had that great year with the Bucs offense in 2024. A young guy seen as innovative.
Right. And even Walder, who was critical initially, admitted Cohen as someone who could potentially provide a schematic advantage. So a positive move there, eventually.
It just shows how critical those first leadership decisions are, doesn't it? They set the whole tone.
Completely. It's more than just names on doors. It signals strategy, culture. It impacts everything that follows in the offseason. Getting that right or wrong is foundational.
Okay, so they sorted out the leadership, albeit with some bumps. Then came the roster moves. They started pouring resources into specific areas, right?
Yeah, once Cohen was in place, they got down to business.
Yeah.
The article highlights they really poured resources into fixing problem spots.
Which were?
Specifically, the secondary, definitely the offensive line, and adding depth to the pass rush. Pretty clear areas of need.
It makes sense. But they also did work on the offensive side, beyond the line.
Oh, yeah. It mentions they rework their skill rooms. So receivers, running backs, basically finding weapons tailored for what Liam Cohen wants to do offensively.
So not just grabbing talent, but grabbing the right talent for the new system. That sounds strategic.
Exactly. It suggests a clear plan linked to the new coach's vision.
And then the big one, the move that dominated the headlines.
Yes. The Travis Hunter trade. Cannot talk about the Jags offseason without talking about this.
The new GM, James Gladstone, certainly didn't wait long to make his mark.
No kidding. Trading picks 5, 36, 126, and a 2026 first-rounder, all to move up to number 2. Plus, they got some later picks back, 104 and 200.
A massive haul to give up, and all for that number 2 pick, which they used on Travis Hunter. Bold is an understatement.
Extremely bold.
Okay.
And this is where Seth Walder at ESPN really hammered them. He gave their whole offseason a C grade overall.
Ouch. And the Hunter trade was the main reason.
It was central to his critique. He flat out called it an overpay, said they gave up a quarterback-level premium for a non-quarterback.
Which is, that's a steep price if you view it purely through the lens of draft pick value charts.
Right. And Walder's concern wasn't just the cost. He said it showed, and this is a direct quote, a level of overconfidence in the evaluation process that usually does not pay off.
Wow. So questioning not just the trade value, but their whole decision-making confidence, that's pretty pointed criticism. A C grade after all that activity? That's got to sting.
It does. But, and this is important, you have to balance that with who Travis Hunter is.
Right, the player himself.
Yeah. The article acknowledges he's got this rare talent. People see him as maybe the most justifiable non-QB ever to make that kind of jump for. Why? Because he has legit potential to be elite at both wide receiver and cornerback.
A true two-way threat. That's almost mythical in today's NFL.
It really is. So while the price was high, the potential payoff is also uniquely high.
It really forces you, as someone watching this, to think about risk, doesn't it? How much does one enormous, high-profile gamble like that define an entire offseason?
Especially when there were other, maybe less flashy, but still strategic moves happening elsewhere on the roster. Does the big swing overshadow everything else?
Okay, so we have this harsh C grade from Walder, heavily focused on the Hunter trade being an overpay and maybe overconfident. It seems hard to argue it was underrated then.
You'd think so. But the Shipley article we're drawing from pushes back directly. It calls Walder's grade a harsh assessment.
Okay, interesting. So what's their counter-argument? How do they justify seeing it differently? And, do you buy it?
Well, I think there's definitely merit to their point. The core of it is about the context of the roster. The article argues that dinging them so hard for the Hunter overpay. Well, that would make sense. Had the Jaguars been a talentless team with no pieces already on the roster.
Oh, okay. So if they were starting from absolute scratch.
Exactly. But the article's key assertion is, this simply is not the case. They argue the Jags already had a decent foundation of talent.
So the argument is, it wasn't like they had to hit on every single pick because the cupboards were bare. They were adding a potential superstar to an already solid group.
Precisely. It changes the calculation of that overpay. If you think Hunter is that unique difference maker, and you believe you have a good base already, maybe paying that premium isn't as damaging as it looks in a vacuum. It's about perceived need and existing assets.
That makes sense. It reframes the risk. And wasn't there another move they made that kind of softened the blow of giving up all those picks?
Yes, that's another crucial point the article makes. It says the Jaguars mitigated the value damage of the Hunter trade with a nice trade down with the Lions on day 2.
Okay, so they recouped some draft capital later on. They showed some savvy after the big splash.
Right. It wasn't just, throwing picks into the fire without thinking. They made the huge move up, but then they also strategically moved back later to gain back some value. It shows a multi-layered approach.
So taking all that together, the existing talent base, the potential uniqueness of Hunter, and the day 2 trade down.
That's what leads the article to conclude that maybe, just perhaps, this makes the Jaguars offseason underrated.
Because the simple overpay narrative misses that broader context. It misses the nuances.
Exactly. The external grades, often based heavily on those draft pick value charts, might not capture the team's internal calculation or their long-term strategy. There's a tension there between the immediate reaction and the potential long game.
It really does make you reconsider how we evaluate these things. Is an overpay always bad? Or is it justified if that player is truly seen as the missing piece for a team that's already close?
And how much credit do you give for the smaller moves, like that trade down that help balance the books, so to speak? It's never just one single move.
It's the whole puzzle, seeing the forest, not just the one really big eye-catching tree.
Well put. It really boils down to that tension we discussed. You've got the outside view overpay, C grade, maybe too much confidence.
Versus the potential inside view, or at least the view argued in the article, existing talent, unique player, strategic mitigation, therefore possibly underrated.
So wrapping this up, it leaves us with some big questions to chew on, doesn't it?
Definitely. Like, how do we really measure off-season success? Is it about those instant grades we see everywhere right after the draft?
Or is it about waiting to see the long-term potential actually play out on the field, which takes time?
And that overconfidence that Walder mentioned, is that sometimes just a necessary gamble? The kind of risk a team has to take if they genuinely believe they're on the cusp of breaking through.
Or is it, as he warned, usually just a recipe for future problems, setting expectations too high?
Yeah. And ultimately, what's it going to take for this Jaguars offseason, with all its activity and that huge swing for Hunter, to actually prove itself as underrated? What do we need to see happen on the field this fall?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Something for all of us, and certainly Jaguars fans, to watch closely as the season gets going.